Ever since I was a child, I've been enchanted by the power of words. The first time I held a pen, it felt like stepping into another world, a place where I could mold chaos into meaning. Over the years, my passion for writing only grew. It became my sanctuary, my way of untangling the complexities of life. Then Isabel entered my world, and everything shifted. She was, without question, the woman I'd always dreamed of. Meeting her felt like walking into one of the stories I loved to create. Our relationship was the kind of whirlwind romance you'd find in a romance novel, overflowing with joy and laughter, but not without its share of heartbreak. Through it all, we found ways to stay together, to survive the rough patches. I thought we'd built something indestructible, a home, a family, and a life filled with memories. But as I've come to realize, life has a cruel way of derailing even the strongest foundations. Today, my daughter, Elena, came to visit. It should have been a moment of joy, but it wasn't. She was her usual warm and kind self, but years of estrangement have created a chasm between us that I couldn't bring myself to cross. After she left, I fell apart. I cried like a man who had lost everything. And maybe I have. She has a life of her own now. She's a wife, a mother, and an incredible one at that. Elena is everything I could have hoped for in a daughter, intelligent, resilient, and beautiful. But when I look at her, all I can see are the shadows of her mother. The same striking features. The same unyielding determination. So why haven't I spoken to her in years? The answer lies in Isabel, in her choices, in her betrayal. The last meaningful conversation I had with Elena was at Isabel's funeral 5 years ago. Her words and my own echo in my mind, a wound that refuses to heal. You're as dead to me as your mother. I didn't stop there. I said the same thing to my son, Marcus. Right there, in front of everyone. Their faces, shocked, devastated, still haunt me. That day, I walked away holding the hand of my youngest daughter, Lily. She was the only one I couldn't let go of. Isabel and I met during our university days in Crestwood. Falling for her was like being swept into a current, effortless and inevitable. People used to joke that we acted like an old married couple long before we exchanged vows. We married soon after graduation and had just celebrated 25 years together when everything unraveled. Our 25th anniversary was something straight out of a dream. It was a bright June day, and the sun poured down over the large white tent in our backyard. More than 200 friends, neighbors, and family members gathered to celebrate with us. My father shared a table with Isabel's parents, and our 3 children filled the house with the kind of laughter that had been missing for years. Even the mayor stopped by to present us with a certificate naming June 16, Isabel and Nathaniel Hayes Day. We renewed our vows that day, and I couldn't take my eyes off Isabel. She was the heart of my world. That evening, as the guests began to leave, I felt an unfamiliar sense of completeness. Elena had just returned from her honeymoon, Marcus was thriving in college, and Lily had finished her first year of high school. For the first time in years, life felt perfect. But perfection is fleeting. A few days later, I was returning some equipment we'd rented for the party. On my way home, I scraped the fender of my old truck against a guardrail. Then, back in the driveway, I clipped the headlight of a shiny new BMW. As I cursed my bad luck, a police cruiser pulled up. It was Caleb, a young man who'd grown up with Marcus. Seeing him in uniform, confident and composed, made me proud in a way I hadn't expected. He was like family. After Caleb finished writing the accident report, we made small talk. Just as he was about to leave, he said something that stuck in my mind like a burr. "Oh, and tell Mrs. Hayes to be careful. Next time she runs a stop sign, it'll be more than a warning," he said with a grin. I must have looked confused because he backtracked quickly. "Sorry, Mr. Hayes. I didn't mean anything by it." I laughed it off. Isabel doesn't always tell me about her tickets. She probably thinks I'd make her walk everywhere if I knew. But the comment nagged at me. I asked him what happened. After hesitating for a moment, Caleb told me. Last Saturday, she rolled through a stop sign on Route 35. She didn't hit anyone, but she sped up after I pulled her over. I had to give her a warning. Thanks for letting me know, I said, brushing it off. But as I drove home, the unease settled deeper. That Saturday, I had been at my father's house all day, helping him fix the deck. I even took him to check out a retirement home, though he hated the idea. Isabel had told me she spent the afternoon reading, relaxing. I dismissed Caleb's comment as a mix-up. Isabel wouldn't lie to me. At least, that's what I told myself. Then, a month later, my sister called to say she'd found Dad on the kitchen floor. He wasn't hurt, just confused. That call marked the start of a chain of events that would unravel everything I thought I knew about my life, and my wife. That Saturday, I planned to visit my dad and try to convince him, once again, that it was time to move somewhere with more support. I'd tried before, but he always brushed me off. Still, I thought maybe this time he'd listen. Deep down, though, I knew better. Stubbornness runs deep in our family. With Marcus and Lily home for the summer, I figured I'd drag them along. I played the guilt card, saying, "You haven't seen Grandpa in forever. He won't be around forever, you know." They rolled their eyes but eventually gave in. Isabel said she'd enjoy the quiet and use the time to finish her book. On the drive, Marcus talked about some girl he liked from his philosophy class, while Lily made it abundantly clear she wasn't wasting her college years worrying about boys. Their conversation naturally led me to share, for the 100th time, how their mom and I had met. I don't think they cared, but I liked telling the story. When we got to Dad's, he lit up seeing the kids. I hadn't seen him that happy in months. We had lunch, swapped stories, and spent the morning together. By noon, he was nodding off in his recliner, so we gave him space to rest. "I'll be right back," I told the kids. "Keep an eye on Grandpa. I need to grab some tools to take down that dead tree in the backyard." Marcus and Lily plopped in front of the TV, promising they'd watch him. I hopped in my truck, intending to drive home for the chainsaw and ropes. But for reasons I couldn't explain, I found myself turning onto Route 35 instead. As I coasted down the hill, I passed the Rosewood Inn. Without thinking, I pulled into the parking lot. That's when I saw it, Isabel's silver Honda Civic. The license plate, with her personalized message, made it unmistakable. I parked and walked over, my heart pounding. The car was locked, and nothing inside seemed unusual. I called the house first. No answer. Then I called her cell. When she picked up, her voice was light, cheerful. "Hi, honey. How are you?" "Oh, not much," I lied. "I'm out grabbing groceries for Dad. Just thought I'd check in." I tried the house, but no one picked up. "Where are you?" She didn't miss a beat. "I'm at the mall," she said, breezy as ever. "Finished my book and figured I'd do a little shopping. That okay?" I stood there, staring at her car in the hotel lot. She was lying to me. "Yeah, sure," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just don't spend too much. What time will you be home?" "Around 6, she said. "Do you want me to make dinner?" "No, don't bother. I'm probably staying at Dad's tonight," I said, my mind racing. "I'll send the kids back home. I'll let you know." Her tone softened. "Okay. Call me when you decide." I pressed her one more time. "You're at the mall by yourself?" "Yes," she said, without hesitation. "Why?" "No reason. Just wondering." "Have fun," I said, then added, almost as an afterthought, "Oh, and try not to run any stop signs near the Rosewood Inn tonight." She hung up quickly after that. Just as the call ended, I heard something, a muffled scream coming from the direction of the hotel. I froze, scanning the area, but saw nothing. I stayed near her car, unsure of what to do. A few minutes later, a police car pulled into the lot. It was Caleb. "Hello, Mr. Hayes," he said, stepping out of the cruiser. "Did you call this in?" "No," I replied, confused. "What's going on?" "Someone reported a car break-in," he said, glancing toward the hotel. "I'd better check with the manager." Before he walked off, I stopped him. "Caleb, can you do me a favor?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Sure, anything," he said. "Can you find out if my wife is here? And if she is, who she's with?" I swallowed hard. "I'll wait next door." He hesitated but nodded. "I'll see what I can do." I watched him drive toward the entrance. The minutes dragged. Then I saw an ambulance pull up. My stomach dropped. Paramedics rushed in and came back out with someone on a stretcher. I couldn't see who it was. When Caleb returned, his face was grim. "I'm sorry, Mr. Hayes," he said carefully. "Your wife, she tried to run through a sliding glass door. She's at County Hospital. Banged up pretty bad, concussion, stitches, broken nose. She's hysterical." The man with her left when the ambulance arrived. "I have his info, but you'll need to file a form at the station to get it." I couldn't speak, couldn't move. Caleb offered his hand, but I just stared at him. After he left, I sank to my knees, tears blinding me. Somehow, I made it back to Dad's house. I stood in the driveway, dazed, until Lily ran out to me. "What's wrong, Dad?" she asked, her voice panicked. I tried to say something, but the words wouldn't come. When I finally broke down, Lily started crying too. Marcus came out, confused, until I managed to choke out, "Your mom's in the hospital. You two need to go help her." They stared at me, trying to process what I was saying. "I'm staying here tonight," I told them, tossing Marcus the keys. Without asking questions, they got in the car and drove off. After making sure Dad was okay, I collapsed onto the couch, utterly drained. Dad woke up and shuffled over, sitting beside me. "What's wrong, Nathan?" he asked. We weren't the type to talk about feelings, so I stayed quiet, bracing myself for him to tell me to man up. Instead, he surprised me. "After you were born," he said softly, "I stole from work to buy your mom a dress. I got caught, paid the money back, almost lost my job. Your mom was furious, so hurt she could barely look at me. I thought I'd ruined everything. But one day, she found a job lead for me, hugged me, forgave me. From then on, I swore I'd do better. Maybe you need to forgive, or be forgiven. I'm proud of you, Nathan. I love you." He put a hand on mine and prayed silently before getting up. I stayed there as night fell, ignoring the phone as it rang and rang. By morning, I managed to make breakfast for Dad before heading out to the backyard alone. Around noon, I felt a hand on my shoulder. "Dad, are you okay?" Lily asked, her eyes red and tired. I shook my head, unable to lie. She hugged me the way she used to when she was little, and we both cried. Eventually, she spoke. "Mom's okay physically," she said through tears. "But she's a mess. She wakes up screaming your name. Elena and I are with her. But she keeps asking why you're not there." "She told us everything, Dad," Lily said, her voice trembling. I confronted her. I told her what she did was unforgivable. I told her I hated her. "Don't say you hate your mother," I snapped, cutting her off. "She loves you, and you love her. She made a mistake, yes, but I'm the one who has to figure out what comes next." "Dad. She cheated. She lied to us," Lily retorted, her anger bubbling just beneath the surface. "She doesn't deserve our love." "It doesn't matter," I insisted, my voice cracking under the strain. She's still your mother. But she's also your wife, she countered. Do you still love her after what she did? Her question hit me like a punch to the gut. I couldn't find the words. For a long moment, I just sat there, staring at nothing. I don't know, I finally said, my voice hollow. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it all. Right now, my heart hurts too much to think clearly. Daddy, Lily said softly, her eyes welling up with tears, I'll stand by you no matter what you decide. I love you. We hugged, holding on to each other like shipwreck survivors clinging to driftwood. A hummingbird flitted through the trees, its tiny wings a blur, and we both fell silent, lost in our thoughts. The weekend dragged on. I stayed at Dad's, barely functioning. Elena and Marcus called to check in, but I refused to talk to Isabel. I couldn't. I wasn't ready. On Monday, I called work and took a few days off. For the next 3 days, I sat in the backyard, spiraling deeper into despair. Lily stayed close, watching me like I might break at any moment. I thought about everything, the 25 years Isabel and I had spent together. No, it wasn't perfect, but there was so much good. The laughter, the love, the life we'd built. And now it was all ash. I didn't want to know the details of her betrayal. The little I already knew was too much. Lily would bring me lunch, but I barely touched it. A roll of paper towels sat beside me, soaked with tears I didn't even bother to hide. 2 days had passed, but my thoughts were no clearer than they were the moment my world came crashing down. Hey, Nathan, a familiar voice called out, breaking me from my haze. I didn't turn to look. Hi, Isabel, I muttered, my tone flat. She sat down across from me, and for the first time, I really looked at her. She looked terrible. Bandages covered her face, bruises bloomed like dark clouds, and stitches cut across her skin. If I looked half as bad, I might as well have been laid out in a morgue. I'm sorry, Nathan, she began, her voice small as she stared at her bruised hands. I know it's not enough, but it's all I have. Elena drove me here because I can't drive myself. I needed to see you. I needed to tell you how sorry I am. What I did, it's my fault, not yours. You didn't deserve any of it. I might have destroyed the most important thing in my life, and I don't know how to fix it. Please, let me explain. No, I said sharply, cutting her off. I don't want to hear it. What I already know is tearing me apart. Don't say anything more. Nathan, please, she pleaded, tears spilling down her swollen face. If you just understood why I was weak, maybe you could forgive me. I said no, I snapped, my voice rising. I don't want to hear it. Nathan, she sobbed. We can heal from this. We can still be a family. Please, just listen. I said no. I shouted, standing up so abruptly the chair scraped loudly against the patio. I turned and walked away, leaving her crying behind me. In the kitchen, Elena caught up to me. Daddy, she said, grabbing my arm, please listen to her. She needs you to forgive her. I turned to her, my anger simmering just below the surface. If you think listening to her excuses will help, then you're more deluded than she is. If she needs to clear her conscience, let her write me a damn letter. I can't sit there and listen to her explain away ruining our marriage. I don't have the strength to forgive her right now. I grabbed my keys and left. I didn't know where I was going or when I'd come back. I just needed to get away. The next day, when I returned to Dad's, Lily greeted me with a smile and wrapped me in a hug. For the first time in days, I felt the faintest flicker of hope. Her smile reminded me that happiness might still exist somewhere, even if I couldn't find it just yet. Dad, she said after a moment, I've decided to move in here with you for a while. You need help with cooking and cleaning, and I need some time away. She grinned, trying to lighten the mood. Besides, I've tasted your cooking. You need me. I chuckled weakly. All right, Lily, let's grab your things. When we got to the house, she packed her car with everything she needed. I brought my stuff too, she announced firmly when we got back to Dad's. I'll stay in the guest room until school starts. Her determined expression made it clear there was no arguing. Later, I asked her why she left. Her face twisted in anger. Can you believe Elena and Marcus? She fumed. Elena said you're being childish and need to make up with Mom. Marcus said everyone cheats and you should just forgive her and get a girl on the side. Can you believe that? They're wrong, Dad. You haven't done anything wrong, but everyone's blaming you. Mom ruined everything, and she doesn't deserve forgiveness. I let her vent, knowing she needed to get it all out. For the next 2 months, I tried to find some sense of normalcy. I went to work, helped Dad around the house, and taught Lily how to make vegetable lasagna. Elena and Marcus called every few days, asking when I was coming home. I imagined Isabel sitting nearby, waiting for my answer. I'm home, I'd say curtly, with Dad. I don't want to talk about Mom or to her. When they pushed, I hung up. One afternoon, Marcus arrived unannounced. He seemed uneasy as we sat on the patio, and I let him speak first. Dad, you need to come home, he said, his tone both firm and pleading. Mom's not okay. It's been 2 months, and she's getting worse. I'm going back to school soon, and Elena can't handle her alone. Mom cries all the time, barely eats or sleeps, and she's lost so much weight it's scaring us. You've punished her enough. She's sorry, and she's hurting just like you are. I stared at him, my emotions churning. This wasn't the boy I'd raised, the one I'd taught to value honesty and integrity. He was defending Isabel. Excusing what she'd done. Marcus, I said coldly, you're a man now, so I'll talk to you like one. Get out of my house. If you think what your mother did is acceptable, then you've lost your way. Go home and take care of her. I'll decide what to do on my own timeline. I turned and went inside, leaving him to stew in his own frustration. A few minutes later, I heard his car start and drive off. By late August, Lily had gone back to school, leaving just Dad and me in the house. Elena and Marcus didn't call, and I didn't reach out. In mid-September, a letter arrived from Isabel. I opened it but couldn't get past the first few lines before shoving it in a drawer. I wasn't ready to confront her words. The pain was still too raw. Lily called every few days to check in on us, always careful not to push. She mentioned Elena and Marcus were caring for Isabel and reminded me she'd be visiting for my birthday at the end of October. You need to decide what you're doing, Dad, she said. Sitting in limbo isn't helping anyone. On October 30th, my 50th birthday, I made my decision. Lily arrived early, greeting me with a bright smile and a tight hug. Happy birthday, Dad, she said. She had planned the day, insisting we go out for a big Italian dinner. I'll show you what real lasagna tastes like, she teased. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of happiness. Dinner was lively, filled with stories and laughter. Even Dad seemed to enjoy himself. For a few hours, I let myself forget everything. When we returned home, I helped settle Dad into bed before joining Lily in the living room. She had tea, and I grabbed a beer, sinking into the couch. So, Dad, she began, have you decided? I took a deep breath. I've decided I don't know everything, I said slowly. I don't understand why she did what she did, and maybe I never will. But my refusal to talk to her hasn't solved anything. I read her letter, and while I don't know if I believe everything she said, I need to hear her out. If reconciliation isn't possible, I'll file for divorce. Either way, we can't keep living in limbo. Lily nodded, but before she could respond, her phone buzzed. She stepped outside to take the call. When she returned, her face was pale, and she sank into the chair across from me, trembling. Daddy. Mom's dead. Her words didn't seem real. What? I managed to choke out. Elena found her in the bathroom, she whispered, her voice breaking. She swallowed a vial of sleeping pills. She's gone. The weight of it crushed me. Isabel, the woman I had loved for 25 years, the mother of my children, was gone. I couldn't process it. The grief and confusion swallowed me whole. Arranging the funeral was excruciating. I tried to remain stoic for the kids, but they knew I was barely holding on. At night, I sat in the backyard, staring at the swing set where the kids had once played and the azaleas Isabel and I had planted together. Everything reminded me of her laughter, her warmth, the life we'd built. And now it was all gone. The guilt was unbearable. I hadn't put the pills in her hand, but I'd contributed to her despair. My silence, my need to make her feel my pain, it had pushed her further into the darkness. I never wanted this. I wanted her to understand how much she'd hurt me, not to leave me forever. She had broken my heart, and in my bitterness, I had broken hers. We had both been wrong. The night before the funeral, Elena came out to the patio where I sat. "Dad, are you okay?" she asked softly. "No," I admitted. "Not really." We sat in silence until Elena finally spoke. "None of this would have happened if you'd come home and forgiven her," she said. "She made a mistake. But she forgave you for your mistakes, didn't she? She told me she couldn't live without you. And your pride killed her." Her words stunned me. My own daughter was blaming me. I hadn't cheated. I hadn't lied. I hadn't swallowed a vial of pills. But I couldn't argue. Not then. "The funeral will be tough," Elena added. "Afterward, everyone's coming back to the house. Marcus and Mom's friends will handle the food. You don't have to be there if you don't want to." I didn't respond, retreating inside to the family room where I had been sleeping. The next morning, I dressed in a suit and tie, bracing myself for the hardest day of my life. The kids were waiting in the living room, dressed and ready. Lily walked over and adjusted my tie, the way her mother used to. She slipped her hand into mine, her head down, as we stepped into the waiting car. She stayed quiet, her grip firm. At the funeral home, the foyer was crowded with friends and acquaintances. As Lily and I entered the viewing room, the murmurs died down, and people parted to let us through. But their expressions confused me. Instead of sympathy, I saw disdain, disgust, even. Few met my eyes. When I nodded to some, they looked away. My boss shook my hand and muttered, "I'm sorry." But even he drew side glances from others. The kids received condolences, but I felt like a pariah. Lily and I knelt at Isabel's casket. Soft organ music played in the background, but whispers behind us cut through. "It's because of him. Unforgiving creep. Hypocrite son of a witch liquidated her." Lily's hand tightened in mine. She'd heard it too. The words stung more than I expected, though I kept my face neutral. The preacher's words brought a brief calm, his message soothing. Isabel's friends sang one of her favorite hymns, non-traditional but poignant. Afterward, several friends stood to share memories of Isabel, and Elena spoke last. Her speech focused on forgiveness and mercy, citing how Jesus forgave those who crucified him. As she spoke, it hit me, they all blamed me for Isabel's death. The contempt in their eyes made sense now. To them, my refusal to forgive had driven her to despair. At the gravesite, a cold wind cut through us as the preacher finished his final prayer. Each of us received a red rose to place on the casket. I went first, followed by Lily, then Elena and Marcus. Dad's old work buddy helped him shuffle forward to say his goodbye. It was one of the most emotional days of my life, but the worst was yet to come. Before we left, I stopped Elena and Marcus, my anger rising to the surface. "I know what you did," I said coldly. You defended your mother, painted me as the villain, and turned everyone against me. Because of that, you're both dead to me, just like her. Don't speak to me. Don't come to my house. I'm no longer your father. Elena's mouth fell open in shock, but I didn't wait for her to respond. I turned to the gathered mourners. That goes for all of you, I announced, gripping Lily's hand. I walked back to the car, my father in his wheelchair beside us, leaving Elena and Marcus behind. Few people came to the house after the funeral, my boss, his wife, 2 old friends, and Lily. That was it. Everyone else believed the whispers, convinced I had pushed Isabel to self-destruction by refusing to forgive her. Lily returned to school after the funeral, leaving me alone in a house that felt emptier than ever. Without Lily, my life was hollow. Elena stayed with her husband's family, and Marcus returned to school. Neither called. I focused on work to distract myself, but Isabel was always on my mind. I woke up expecting her beside me, only to be hit by the memory of her affair. Her letter had revealed that her lover, Jack Morgan, was an old neighbor, and he'd even attended our 25th anniversary party. That betrayal cut deeper than anything. Over time, the pain dulled but never fully left. Elena had a baby girl she named Isabel and later a son, Logan. I never met them. Marcus married his college sweetheart, but their marriage ended after 2 years when he cheated, a behavior he'd once defended in his mother. He moved to California, and I never saw him again after the funeral. Lily kept me informed, slipping bits of news into conversations. Despite everything, they were still my children. My boss became my closest friend, giving me the support I needed to rebuild my life. 4 years later, I was promoted to senior manager in Florida. I sold the house, moved to Orlando, and began overseeing the Eastern U.S. distribution center. I even got another golden retriever for Max, hoping the companionship would ease my loneliness. Lily graduated with honors and landed a management job in Florida. She moved in with me temporarily, filling the house with life again, but even she was starting to build her own life. And I knew our time together wouldn't last forever. Dad had passed away a year after Isabel, leaving me to face a future that felt increasingly solitary. 5 years after Isabel's death, I realized I needed a purpose. I couldn't become a lonely old man with nothing but my dogs for company. I returned to an old passion, writing. I started with short stories, a few of which I sold to a local magazine. Then, one weekend, I began outlining a story about the hardest period of my life. What started as a short piece turned into something much bigger, a full manuscript. Writing it dredged up painful memories, but the process was cathartic. When I finished, I boxed it up, unsure if I ever wanted anyone to read it. Still, the act of writing helped me face and conquer my past. To improve my skills, I enrolled in a creative writing class at a local community college. Most of my classmates were young and inexperienced, but I found camaraderie with 2 other seniors. Henry was retired and working on a book about his family's Civil War history. Anna, a widow, had raised 5 children before moving to Florida after her husband's death. She took courses to keep her job and find new interests. Anna and I quickly found common ground. She talked about her life, her family, and her struggles, and I listened carefully, taking mental notes. After nearly 30 years of marriage, I hadn't dated in decades. One day, she realized she was doing all the talking and asked about my story. At first, I gave her a brief overview, but she pressed for more. Eventually, I invited Anna over for dinner, hoping to share my full story. She smiled warmly and said yes. That Friday, I cooked my best dish, vegetable lasagna, and set the table out on the patio. After the meal, Anna leaned back in her chair, smiling. Dinner was wonderful, Nathan. I don't know many men who can make lasagna like that. What other surprises are you hiding? I shrugged. Not much. I run the company's distribution center, live with my daughter Lily, and have 2 Goldens, Max and Charlie. My wife passed away over 5 years ago, and I have 2 other children I don't see anymore. That's me in a nutshell. Pretty boring. Anna raised an eyebrow. I doubt boring is the right word. You promised me your story if I came to dinner, and I'm holding you to that. Instead of diving into an explanation, I went inside and returned with a box holding my manuscript. This is my story, I said, placing it on the table. A novel about the most important events in my life. Writing it helped me work through my wife's death, my family breaking apart, and the aftermath. I haven't shown it to anyone before, but I'd love your opinion. Anna's eyes lit up. Nathan, that's incredible. I'd be honored to read it. What's it called? Fairweather Friends, I replied. She chuckled as she opened the box and glanced at the hefty stack of pages. Wow. It's 987 pages. That's impressive, but you're asking for honesty, right? Always, I said. Be as critical as you want. I haven't even shown it to Lily. It's too personal. I'm not sure she could handle it. She smiled. I promised to give it my full attention. I'll start tomorrow. We spent the rest of the evening talking about writing, the joys of living in Florida, and even shared some laughs over our favorite movies. For once, the Florida weather cooperated, and the warm breeze made the night feel magical. As I walked Anna to her car, she kissed me on the cheek, leaving me feeling like a teenager again. After she drove away, I cleaned up, smiling for the first time in a long time. Days passed, then a week, but Anna didn't come to class or call. I couldn't stop wondering if the book had scared her off. Maybe it was too heavy, too personal. Was she avoiding me? I thought about calling her but didn't want to seem pushy. 2 weeks later, she left a voicemail. Hi, Nathan, it's Anna. I'd like you to come to dinner Friday night. My son is visiting, and I want you to meet him. I might have a little surprise for you too. So bring a bottle or 2 of that white wine we had. Be here at 7. Call me back. Bye. Relieved to hear from her, I called back and agreed. On Friday, I dressed casually but nicely and brought 2 bottles of wine recommended by a local magazine. Anna greeted me warmly, giving me a quick tour of her house near Lake Baldwin before leading me to the patio. A small table for 3 was set with candles and glasses. From between 2 orange trees, a man stepped into view. Nathan, this is my son Daniel, Anna said. Daniel, this is Nathan Hayes. It's a pleasure to meet you, Daniel said, shaking my hand firmly. Mom's told me a lot about you. It's rare for her to be impressed, but you seem to have done it. I smiled nervously. Nice to meet you too, Daniel. I'm sure she's exaggerating. There's not much interesting about me. Anna gave me a playful smile as she placed the wine in the refrigerator. When she returned, she surprised me by taking my hand. Nathan, she began. I invited you here under slightly false pretenses. We'll eat soon, but I have something important to share first. It's a surprise, hopefully a good one. Her serious tone made me both curious and nervous. Nathan, my son came here today to meet you because I did something you might not have approved of if I'd asked. But I did it, and it's too late now. If you're mad, go ahead and say so. She hesitated, then continued. I read your book. I finished it in 2 days. It was that powerful. I couldn't tear myself away. It's the most inspiring and heartbreaking story I've ever read. I cried so much. Especially at the part where you went to live with your father and later when you wrote about your children. Nathan, it's extraordinary. I opened my mouth to respond, but she wasn't done. I sent it to Daniel, she admitted, glancing at her son. I knew you might not want me to, but I had to. He doesn't usually read unsolicited manuscripts, but I begged him to make an exception. He read it, and he loved it too. Daniel has something to tell you. Daniel picked up where she left off. Your book is incredible, Mr. Hayes, he said, his enthusiasm clear. I work at Prentice Press in New York. I'm the assistant managing editor, and it's my job to screen submissions from new authors. This is the best debut novel I've ever read. I'd love to help you edit it and get it published. I sat there, stunned. My mind was racing, and I didn't know what to say. Anna smiled warmly at me, and Daniel's sincerity was unmistakable. For the first time in years, I felt something new, a spark of hope for the future. Daniel continued enthusiastically. We receive about 100 new manuscripts each month, and my team evaluates them carefully before deciding which to forward to our reviewers. Your book went through this process, and all of us agreed. It deserves to be published. Congratulations, Nathan. It's an incredibly moving piece, and I'm confident it will be a winner. I sat there, dumbfounded. My expression must have gone from shock to outright idiocy because Anna's smile widened as she watched me, clearly amused. I couldn't speak. The gravity of what Daniel had just said was too overwhelming. Finally, Anna stood, kissed me gently on the forehead, and said, "Let's eat. You'll need your strength after that bombshell." As she prepared the salad, I slowly regained the ability to speak. By the time we sat down for her incredible mahi-mahi, we were discussing the book in detail. Anna teared up at several points in the conversation, and I found myself doing the same. It was surreal to talk about the deeply personal moments I'd poured into the story, now knowing they would soon be shared with the world. We ended the meal with sweet peach cobbler and coffee. Daniel outlined what I needed to do next: edits, promotional efforts, and the potential royalties. You won't get rich, he said with a grin. But the impact of a book like this goes far beyond money. By the time he drifted off in a chair, my head was spinning. Anna and I finished the last of the wine on the patio, the cool night breeze helping me calm down. We fantasized about what it would be like to be a famous author like Stephen King or J.K. Rowling. Though I knew I wasn't in their league, it was fun to dream. Around midnight, reality crept back in, and I knew it was time to head home. As Anna walked me to my car, she leaned in and gave me a deep, lingering kiss that stirred emotions I hadn't felt in years. It was as if she had reached into my soul and reignited something I thought had been extinguished. It reminded me that, at 55 years old, my life wasn't over. Yet the memory of Isabel lingered, casting a shadow on my joy and leaving me bittersweet. For the next 3 months, I poured myself into revising my manuscript with Prentice Press. My editor, an experienced and patient woman, guided me step by step. The transition from my cluttered MS Word file into professional publishing software was tedious, but it forced me to examine every word with fresh eyes. Most of our collaboration happened through emails and phone calls, with only one in-person meeting. When the final deadline approached, FedEx delivered a printed proof of my novel. I spent the entire weekend meticulously combing through it, reading aloud to catch anything I might have missed. No matter how many times I read it, I kept finding little things to tweak. My editor had warned me this would happen, and she was right. Balancing the manuscript and my job at the distribution center in Orlando was exhausting. Lily cheered me on but knew better than to ask for a sneak peek. "Not until it's done," I told her. Still, she kept me grounded, making sure I ate properly and took breaks. Anna, however, stayed a bit more distant, only visiting on weekends. "I don't want to disrupt your creative flow," she joked, but I suspected she knew how much her presence calmed me. Those evenings we spent together, talking about life, sharing meals, became my sanctuary. Through our conversations, I started to untangle the knot of emotions I'd buried after Isabel's betrayal. I came to realize we'd both been caught in a cycle of pain neither of us fully understood. The night I submitted my final revisions to Prentice Press, Anna stayed over, and we celebrated with a quiet intimacy that left no doubt about the growing bond between us. On May 1st, my book hit the shelves. The team at Prentice had planned a whirlwind tour of book signings across the country, and I took 3 weeks off to promote the release. Though I'd always dreamed of being a published author, the reality was grueling: airports, hotels, and long lines of readers eager to share how the book had touched them. While I was grateful for the support, the travel wore me down. Twice, Anna surprised me by showing up unannounced at my events. Her playful energy turned the exhausting routine into something special. "I'm just here to see the world-famous Nathan Hayes," she teased. Both times, she stayed the night, and her presence reminded me of the warmth and comfort I'd missed for so long. Each time she left, I felt the ache of her absence, and I realized I was falling in love. The final stop of the tour was in Ellicott City, Maryland, my hometown. I'd requested it be the last event, and Prentice graciously agreed. The signing was held at a bookstore only a few miles from the home where I'd once lived with Isabel and the kids. When I arrived, a long line of people was already waiting. A table was set up near the entrance, piled high with copies of my book. A large poster featuring my photo and a brief synopsis stood nearby. Seeing my face on that poster, in the town where so much had happened, sent a wave of emotions crashing over me. I scanned the crowd and recognized familiar faces from my past. My old boss and his wife were the first in line, and seeing them brought an unexpected warmth. We exchanged hugs and promised to reconnect soon, though the growing line behind them didn't allow much time to catch up. As the signing began, I greeted each reader warmly, signing their books and chatting briefly. Some people asked for photos, which I happily obliged. To my surprise, the event was overwhelmingly positive, and I found myself enjoying the connection with those who'd read my story. About 30 minutes in, an old friend stepped forward, someone who had avoided me at Isabel's funeral. He handed me his copy of the book to sign, and I smiled, extending a handshake. Instead of taking it, he leaned in and said quietly, "I'm sorry for the way I treated you. I didn't realize, until I read your book." Before I could respond, he walked away, his shame evident in the slump of his shoulders. His apology was the first, but not the last. Throughout the day, others I'd once called friends approached me, offering similar words of regret. It was humbling to hear, but also painful, a reminder of how much judgment I'd endured in the aftermath of Isabel's death. As the event wrapped up, I reflected on how far I'd come. The book that had started as a way to process my pain had opened doors I never imagined. It had helped me connect with strangers, mend old relationships, and even rediscover parts of myself I thought I'd lost. For the first time in years, I felt at peace with the past, and ready to embrace whatever came next. I hadn't expected such a flood of reconciliation, but it was cathartic. The most surreal moment of the day came when Grace Morgan approached. She walked up with an awkward grin, holding a copy of my book. "Hi, Nathan," she said. "I know it's strange to see me here after everything, but I wanted to meet you and offer my sympathy. I can't apologize for what Jack did, but I can tell you this, I kicked him out shortly after Isabel died. We've been divorced for 4 years now, and I'm engaged to a contractor from Annapolis." She hesitated, then added with a sly smile, "Oh, and you might have heard a rumor that you were looking for Jack to exact some revenge. Well, that was me. I started it. It must have scared him, though, because he quit his job and moved to Saudi Arabia. I haven't seen him since." I stared at her, speechless. After a moment, I took the book she was holding and wrote. "To Grace, no fairweather friend. I hope my words bring you the peace I found. Thanks for listening, Nathan." When I handed it back, she surprised me by leaning in for a hug. "Thank you," she whispered. Then, she walked away, leaving me both shaken and relieved. As the signing neared its end, I glanced up and froze. Elena was standing by a book rack, watching me. Her expression was subdued, unreadable. I tried to catch her eye, but she turned and walked away before I could say a word. I stood up, scanning the store, but she was already gone. Last in line was Lily. She greeted me with a big hug, and we made small talk as she walked me to her car. She drove me back to my hotel, not a Holiday Inn, and we spent a long time talking about Anna. Lily admitted she liked Anna and hoped I did too. When I told her I thought I was in love with Anna, she threw her arms around me and sobbed into my shoulder. Her reaction caught me off guard. "I just want you to be happy again, Daddy," she whispered. At that moment, a police car pulled up nearby and flashed its headlights. Sergeant Caleb stepped out, grinning. He tapped on the window, and we rolled it down. "Nathan Hayes, in the flesh," he exclaimed. We had a mini reunion right there in the parking lot, talking, laughing, and catching up. I handed him a signed copy of my book, inscribing it. "To Caleb, meeting you changed my life. No offense." After Caleb left, Lily and I returned to the house for dinner. Coming back to my old hometown hadn't been as traumatic as I'd feared. A few weeks later, there was a knock on my door that caught me completely off guard. Anna and I had just finished breakfast and were discussing the New York Times bestseller list. Fairweather Friends was ranked third in nonfiction. When I opened the door, I was stunned to find Elena standing there. "Hi, Daddy," she said hesitantly. "How are you?" I stared at her, caught off guard. "Hi, Elena. I'm fine. What are you doing here?" "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by," she replied, avoiding my gaze. "This neighborhood is 900 miles from yours," I said, raising an eyebrow. "That's a bit out of the way, don't you think?" Before Elena could answer, Anna appeared behind me. She placed a firm hand on my shoulder and said, "Would you like to introduce me, Nathan?" "Anna, this is my daughter Elena," I said awkwardly. Anna immediately stepped forward and hugged Elena tightly. "Come on in. I've heard so much about you." The two of them walked to the living room, chatting like old friends. I stood there for a moment, stunned by Anna's ease, before resigning myself to cleaning the kitchen while they talked. Every time I passed by the living room, they were laughing, giggling, or sharing photos. Anna oohed and awed over pictures of Elena's kids. After a while, Anna called out, "Honey, come join us." I sighed but complied, sitting next to her. She grabbed my hand, more to keep me from escaping than out of affection. Elena's eyes lingered on our clasped hands, and the room fell into a tense silence. After what felt like an eternity, Anna broke the silence. "Okay, since neither of you wants to speak, I'll do it. Nathan, I invited Elena here because she has something to say. I knew you wouldn't invite her yourself, so I took the liberty. If you want me to keep being a guest in your house, you're going to sit here and listen." Her words left no room for argument. My gaze darted between Anna and Elena. I didn't want another confrontation. So I leaned back and braced myself for whatever was coming next. "Dad, I came to see how you're doing." "That's no lie." "But I also came to apologize," Elena began, her voice trembling. Her eyes darted away from mine. "I was wrong about so many things, especially about you. For years, I blamed you for everything that happened to Mom, to Marcus, and to me. I thought it was all your fault." I stayed silent, watching as she fought to find the right words. "It wasn't until I read your book that I started to see the truth," she continued. "I only saw my version of what happened back then, but your book opened my eyes to your side. For the first time, I understood how hurt you were. I felt so foolish reading your words, realizing how much pain you carried." "I guess I never thought you had feelings," Elena said, her voice trembling. "You barely expressed them when we were little. But your book, it showed me everything." Her voice cracked, and she took a shaky breath. "To me, you always seemed so strong, so confident, like nothing could touch you. I didn't realize that was a mask you wore to protect yourself, and maybe us. But Mom, she broke through that shield, didn't she? She hurt you in ways I never understood." I glanced at Anna, who gave me a supportive nod, urging me to keep listening. For years, I thought if you had just been strong enough to forgive her, everything would have been fine, Elena admitted, her voice softening. But now I see, you were strong. Strong enough to walk away from the woman you loved for 25 years to protect us from her mistake. I didn't give you the credit you deserved, Dad. I abandoned you when you needed me most. And I told everyone it was your fault. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she continued. After Mom died, I told people she died because of what you did. I was so wrong. I realize that now. I've started to correct my mistakes. I bought copies of your book and gave them to your and Mom's old friends, asking them to read it. I told them you didn't do anything wrong, that you were hurt more than anyone could imagine. She hesitated, wiping her eyes. I saw you at the book signing a few weeks ago. I wanted to come over and hug you, but I didn't have the courage. That's why I'm here today, to say I'm sorry and to ask you to be part of my life again. It's been over 5 years, Dad. You've never met your grandchildren. They're 2 and 4 now. I want you to come home. I want you to be my father again. I don't want to be dead to you anymore. I love you, Daddy. I need you to love me again. Elena's voice broke as she finished, and she lowered her head, sobbing quietly. A prick of guilt pierced my heart. I glanced at Anna, who was watching me closely, waiting to see how I'd respond. My mind raced, conflicted. I needed more time to think. What about Marcus? I asked, stalling. How does he feel about me? Did he know you were coming here? Elena sniffed and wiped her nose. Marcus? He's a mess. I think what Mom did hurt him the most. After Chloe caught him cheating and divorced him, he moved to California and started living recklessly. He's been bouncing from one girlfriend to another, even dating a married woman. When her husband found out, Marcus skipped town to avoid the fallout. He still thinks everyone cheats and that it's normal. No, he doesn't know I'm here, and honestly, I don't care what he thinks. Her bitterness gave me a moment to collect my thoughts, but I still wasn't ready to commit. Elena, what are your plans now? I asked. Are you staying in town? I'm staying with Lily for a couple of days, she said. She wanted me to see her new apartment before I head home. I nodded slowly. All right, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll think about everything you've said and let you know what I decide. That's the best I can do right now. Elena gave me a weak smile. Honestly, I didn't even expect this much. Thank you, Dad. I'm going to see Lily now. She turned to Anna. It was nice to finally meet you. I hope to see you again soon. Take care of my dad for me. As suddenly as she had appeared, Elena was gone, leaving me with a whirlwind of emotions. I turned to Anna, who took my hand. You're not alone in this, she said gently. We'll figure it out together. When Anna and I returned from our Caribbean cruise, a gift from Prentice Press after Fairweather Friends hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, we flew straight to Maryland. It was time for me to meet my grandchildren. Elena's children, now 2 and 4, were bundles of energy. Seeing them for the first time brought a lump to my throat. I couldn't help but think about all the moments I'd missed. Anna, with her years of grandparenting experience, gave me valuable advice and helped ease me through the awkwardness. We spent a week in Maryland, creating new memories and repairing the bond between father and daughter. The best moment came at dinner with Elena's family. As we passed around plates of food, I cleared my throat and made an announcement. Anna and I have decided to get married. Elena's face lit up with joy. That's wonderful, Dad. We made the decision on the cruise, I said, smiling at Anna. Lily already knows. She's been helping plan the wedding. After leaving Maryland, we visited Anna's children to share the news. They welcomed me warmly, and we began building a new family together. Life hadn't turned out the way I thought it would when I was young. Back then, I believed in fairy tales, that love was forever and heartbreak was something that only happened to other people. But life isn't a fairy